What if Voldemort discovered he was always a pawn? In this alternative ending Harry Potter story, the Dark Lord uncovers a terrifying truth. A primordial entity called the Shadow That Devours has been manipulating him since birth. Every Horcrux, every murder, every dark spell was orchestrated to free an ancient evil from its prison. Now facing cosmic manipulation, Voldemort must choose: remain a puppet or break free. This is the story of how the most powerful dark wizard defied his creator, transformed his fractured soul into an unprecedented singularity, and formed an impossible alliance with Harry Potter to save reality itself. When prophecy shatters and free will becomes the ultimate weapon, even the darkest villain can rewrite his fate. The Shadow wanted a key. Voldemort became the lock. Now take a deep breath and let's go. The year is 1997. The Second Wizarding War rages across Britain like wildfire consuming parchment. Voldemort stands at the apex of his power, more unstoppable than ever before. The Ministry of Magic has fallen. Hogwarts bends beneath his iron grip. His Death Eaters march through Diagon Alley in broad daylight, their masks gleaming like death's own heralds. The wizarding world trembles. Parents whisper protective enchantments over their children's beds. The Order of the Phoenix fights desperately in the shadows, knowing they are losing ground with each passing moon. But tonight is different. Deep within the bowels of Malfoy Manor, in a chamber so ancient that even Lucius Malfoy himself never knew it existed, the Dark Lord descends into darkness. The air grows colder with each step. His crimson eyes pierce the blackness like twin bleeding stars. He is alone. Not even Nagini accompanies him here. This is a journey he must take in solitude, for he seeks something that no other living wizard has ever dared to pursue: the primordial archive. Whispers of its existence have haunted the darkest corners of magical history for millennia. A repository of knowledge predating Merlin himself, predating the Founders, predating even the ancient druids who first learned to bend reality to their will. Most wizards believe it to be myth, a fairy tale told to ambitious students who hunger for power beyond their grasp. But Voldemort knows better. He has spent decades piecing together fragments of truth from forbidden texts, from the dying gasps of ancient wizards, from dreams that felt more like memories bleeding through the veil of time itself. The chamber opens before him like a wound in reality. The walls are not made of stone, but of something older, darker, crystallized shadow that seems to breathe with malevolent patience. Runes cover every surface, but they are not written in any magical language he recognizes. They pulse with a sickly green luminescence that makes even his cold blood run colder. The air tastes of copper and ash and something else, something that reminds him of the moment before death, that final exhale when the soul prepares to flee the body. In the center of the chamber stands a monolith, black as the void between stars, smooth as still water. And upon its surface, letters begin to form, written in blood that appears from nowhere, dripping upward in defiance of gravity and reason. The Serpent Lord comes seeking truth. Voldemort's lipless mouth curves into something approximating a smile. He raises his wand, the Elder Wand, the most powerful instrument of magic in existence. I seek the knowledge of the primordial ones. The first magic, the source of all power. The blood letters writhe and reform. Power? You know nothing of power, Tom Marvolo Riddle. You are a child playing with matches in a library of flames. His hand tightens around his wand. No one has called him that name in decades. No one living, at least. I am Lord Voldemort. I have conquered death itself. I have split my soul 7 ways and anchored myself to immortality. I have brought the magical world to its knees. Do not presume to lecture me about power. The monolith begins to hum. It is not a sound that enters through the ears, but through the bones themselves, vibrating in the marrow, resonating in the teeth and skull. The chamber trembles. Dust that has lain undisturbed for 10,000 years begins to swirl in impossible patterns, and then the monolith cracks, not breaking but opening, like an eye that has been closed since before humanity learned to speak. And Voldemort sees, oh, how he sees. Images flood his mind with the force of a tidal wave crashing through paper walls. His knees buckle. The Elder Wand clatters to the ground. He does not notice. He cannot notice, because he is watching himself, watching his entire life unfold like a tapestry woven by unseen hands. But now he sees the threads. Now he sees the pattern. Now he sees the puppeteer. He watches his mother, Merop Gaunt, brewing the love potion that ensnared Tom Riddle Sr. But hovering behind her, invisible to mortal eyes, he sees it, a shadow, a presence, whispering in her ear, guiding her hand, feeding her desperate heart with thoughts of love and possession. The shadow smiles. He watches himself as a child in the orphanage, discovering his powers, hurting other children, reveling in their fear. But now he sees that every moment of cruelty, every spark of dark satisfaction, was fed by whispers he never consciously heard. The shadow was there, in the corner of every room, nurturing the darkness within him like a gardener tending poisonous flowers. He watches himself at Hogwarts, young and brilliant and hungry for knowledge. He watches himself discover the Chamber of Secrets, befriend the basilisk, commit his first murder. And there, always there, lurking just beyond perception, the shadow guides him, leads him to the right books, plants the right questions in his mind, ensures that every step he takes leads him further down the path of darkness. He watches himself create the first Horcrux, the diary. He remembers the euphoria of splitting his soul, of binding himself to immortality. But now he sees the truth. The ritual he used was not discovered through his own genius. It was left for him to find, in a book that mysteriously appeared in the restricted section of the library exactly when he needed it most. The shadow orchestrated even that, every single thing, his rise to power. The First War, his downfall at Godric's Hollow, Harry Potter, the prophecy, even that was crafted. The shadow had whispered in Sybil Trelawney's ear, feeding her the words that would set everything in motion. Harry Potter was not his destined nemesis by cosmic chance. Harry Potter was created, molded, positioned precisely to push Voldemort toward this very moment. The Horcruxes, his anchors to immortality, his greatest achievement, his ultimate defense against death. Now he sees them for what they truly are. Not shields protecting him, but chains binding him. Each piece of his soul is a tether, a leash by which the shadow could pull him, control him, guide him exactly where it wanted him to go. And where did it want him to go? The vision shifts. He sees beyond his own timeline now. He sees into the abyss of history, back before recorded magic, back before the first wizards, back to the time when the world was young and wild and magic flowed through everything like blood through veins. He sees them, the primordial ones, beings of pure magical essence, so powerful that their mere existence shaped reality around them. They were not human. They were not creatures. They were concepts given form, order and chaos, light and darkness, life and death. They existed in perfect balance, and their power maintained the very fabric of magical reality. But one of them grew hungry, the shadow that devours, the primordial dark. It sought to consume the others, to unmake balance and rule alone over an existence remade in its image of perfect entropy. The war that followed nearly tore reality apart. In the end, the other primordials united and sealed the shadow away, locking it beyond the veil of magic itself, in a prison constructed from the foundations of reality. But such beings cannot truly die. They can only wait. For millennia the shadow waited, and slowly, carefully, it learned to whisper through the cracks in its prison. It could not act directly, it could not manifest, but it could influence, it could guide, it could corrupt. And so it began to craft its escape, one pawn at a time, across centuries of manipulation. Grindelwald was the first attempt, a false start. He was powerful, but too idealistic, too bound by his own twisted vision of the greater good. He could not be pushed far enough. But then came Tom Riddle, an orphan with a broken soul, born of artificial love, raised in isolation and cruelty, gifted with power and cursed with ambition, perfect, malleable, hungry. The shadow had fed him darkness his entire life, had guided him to split his soul, to scatter it across objects of power, not to protect him, but to weaken the barriers between worlds. Each Horcrux was not a shield, but a crack in reality. Each murder, each act of dark magic, each spell of unspeakable evil had thinned the veil just a little more. And now, with the Elder Wand in his possession, with 7 pieces of his soul scattered across Britain, with the magical world descending into chaos and fear and death, the conditions were finally perfect. The veil was tissue-thin. All that remained was for Voldemort to perform one final act, one ultimate ritual that he believed would grant him absolute power, the right of complete dominion. He had learned of it months ago, discovered it in an ancient text that called to him like a siren song. With the Elder Wand and the completion of this ritual, he would transcend mortality entirely, becoming a god among wizards. Or so the text promised. Now he sees the truth. The ritual would not elevate him, it would shatter the final barrier, keeping the shadow imprisoned. His fragmented soul, his acts of evil, his very existence had been crafted specifically to unlock the prison. And when he performed the rite, believing he was claiming ultimate power, he would instead become the door through which the Shadow That Devours would return to unmake reality itself. He was never the Dark Lord. He was the key to an ancient lock. He was never the master of his own fate. He was a tool, crafted across decades, honed through suffering and ambition, designed for one singular purpose, to free the shadow. The vision ends, the monolith closes. Voldemort finds himself on his hands and knees on the cold stone floor, gasping like a drowning man, breaking through the surface of dark water. His mind reels. His carefully constructed sense of self crumbles like sand through skeletal fingers. Everything he was, everything he believed, everything he fought for, a lie. A script written by a being so far beyond him that he was nothing more than an insect following scent trails laid by an invisible hand. For the first time in his life, Lord Voldemort feels something he thought he had burned out of himself decades ago. Something he despised in others and thought himself immune to. Fear. The silence in the chamber is absolute. Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping forest, but the suffocating void of a tomb sealed for eternity. Voldemort remains motionless on the cold floor, his skeletal fingers splayed against stone that predates the rise of civilizations. His mind, that brilliant, terrible instrument that conquered death and bent thousands to his will, now fractures under the weight of cosmic truth. He was a puppet, a marionette dancing on strings woven from his own ambition. Every choice he thought was his own, every victory he celebrated, every enemy he crushed, all of it orchestrated by something wearing darkness like a cloak, something that saw him not as the Dark Lord, but as a means to an end. Slowly, painfully, he rises to his feet. His crimson eyes, usually burning with malevolent certainty, now flicker with something new, something dangerous. Not the cold rage he has wielded like a blade, but a fury born of humiliation, of violation. His entire existence has been a cage disguised as a throne. He retrieves the Elder Wand from where it fell. The wood feels different in his hand now. He had believed it the ultimate tool of power. Now he wonders, did the shadow guide him to seek it? Was even Dumbledore's defeat part of the grand design? Of course it was. The realization hits him like a killing curse to the chest. Every major event in his life, every decision point, every moment of triumph or failure, all of it had been carefully cultivated to bring him here, to this moment, poised on the edge of performing a ritual that would crack the world open and allow an ancient evil to devour existence itself. But here is where the Shadow made its first mistake, its only mistake. It assumed that when Voldemort learned the truth, he would be broken. That despair would consume him, that he would either collapse into madness or foolishly proceed with the ritual out of spite or nihilistic surrender. The Shadow did not account for one simple fact. Tom Marvolo Riddle did not survive his childhood, did not rise to power, did not conquer death itself by accepting defeat. Ever. If there is one thing Voldemort has proven throughout his terrible existence, it is this: he bows to no one. Not to death, not to prophecy, not to fate itself, and certainly not to some primordial entity that dared to use him as an instrument. His lipless mouth curves into a smile that would make dragons retreat to their caves. So you thought to use me as your key, Ancient One. You thought me your puppet, your tool, your doorway into the world. His voice echoes through the chamber, cold and sharp as a blade forged in winter. But you made one fatal error in your millennia of planning. You gave me power, real power. You fed me knowledge. You guided me to magic so dark, so profound, that I transcended mortal limitations. And now, he raises the Elder Wand and channels magic through it, not destructive, but analytical, diagnostic. Threads of silver light pour from the wand's tip, spreading through the chamber like a spider's web, illuminating the runes, the walls, the very air itself. Now I will unmake your design. I will take every thread you wove around me, and I will unravel them. I will tear apart every plan you crafted. And then, Ancient Shadow, then I will find you in your prison, and I will show you what true darkness looks like. The monolith shudders. The runes flare with sudden, violent light. The Shadow is aware. It is watching, and perhaps for the first time in 10,000 years, it feels something resembling concern. Voldemort apparates from the chamber in a crack of displaced air that echoes like thunder in a crypt. He materializes in the grand hall of Malfoy Manor. His Death Eaters are assembled, awaiting his return. Bellatrix Lestrange kneels closest to where he appears, her face upturned in fanatical devotion. Lucius Malfoy stands pale and anxious. Severus Snape observes from the shadows with his usual inscrutable expression. Others crowd the hall, the black-robed elite of his army, the instruments of his will. Or so he thought. Now he looks at them with new eyes. How many of their decisions have been influenced by the Shadow? How many were positioned around him not by his choice, but by ancient design? He studies Snape more carefully. The spy who plays both sides. Was his love for Lily Potter genuine, or was even that emotion cultivated by the Shadow to ensure Snape's placement at Hogwarts, ensuring Harry Potter would survive long enough to fulfill his role in the grand design? The paranoia would cripple a lesser mind. But Voldemort has spent decades trusting no one. This is merely an expansion of his natural suspicions. My lord, Bellatrix breathes, her voice trembling with worship. You have returned. What wonders did you discover in the depths? What power have you claimed? He looks down at her. Bellatrix, his most loyal servant. Bellatrix, who killed her own cousin for him. Bellatrix, who would burn the world if he commanded it. Even she might be a piece on the board, positioned and manipulated. But he needs pieces of his own now, and she, at least, is useful. I have discovered, he says slowly, each word dropping into the silence like stones into still water, that we face an enemy I never anticipated. An enemy that has been moving against us since before I was born. An enemy that seeks not merely to defeat me, but to use me to unmake reality itself. Confusion ripples through the assembled Death Eaters. Snape's eyes narrow fractionally. Lucius takes an involuntary step back. "My lord, I don't understand." Lucius ventures carefully. "What enemy could possibly threaten you? The Ministry has fallen. The Order is scattered. Potter is in hiding. We stand triumphant." Triumphant. Voldemort's laugh is harsh and hollow. "We stand exactly where we were meant to stand. Every victory we have achieved was allowed to happen, guided to happen, to bring us to a specific moment. A ritual I intended to perform. A ritual that would not grant me godhood, but would instead release an entity of primordial darkness that has been imprisoned since before magic itself was codified." Silence. The kind of silence that follows when someone has said something so impossible that minds refuse to process it. Snape is the first to speak. "My lord, you are saying that someone, or something, has been manipulating your path from the beginning." "Not someone, something. The Shadow That Devours. One of the primordial beings who existed before wizardkind. It has been whispering through reality for millennia, crafting pawns, creating circumstances, all to engineer its escape from an ancient prison." He can see the disbelief on their faces. They think he has gone mad. They think the power has finally broken his mind. Even Bellatrix looks uncertain, her devotion warring with confusion. "You doubt me," he states flatly. "Good. Doubt is wise. Trust nothing, not even your own memories. Because if this shadow could manipulate me, the most powerful wizard alive, it has certainly influenced all of you as well." He turns away from them, pacing before the grand fireplace where green flames dance like captured spirits. "The ritual I was meant to perform is scheduled for the next new moon, 3 nights from now. The shadow expects me to complete it, believing I still pursue godhood. But I will not be its tool. Instead, I will do what no one expects. I will dismantle every part of its plan, starting with the very foundation it forced me to create." Bellatrix rises to her feet, her face alight with manic understanding. "The Horcruxes. You mean to destroy the Horcruxes?" "No." His voice cuts through the air like a blade. "I mean to reclaim them. The shadow wanted my soul fragmented because each piece weakened the barriers between worlds. But what it did not anticipate is that I have learned to exist in this fractured state. I have mastered it. And if I can reabsorb each fragment, not healing my soul, but incorporating them into a unified whole while maintaining their individual power, I will become something the shadow never intended. Something beyond its design." He turns to face them again, his red eyes blazing with renewed purpose. "I will become what I was always meant to be, not a Dark Lord, not a puppet, but a force of magic so concentrated, so absolute, that even primordial beings will learn to fear my name." The next 3 days unfold in a storm of controlled chaos. Voldemort moves with purpose that borders on possession, though now he questions even that thought. Is this urgency his own, or another manipulation? He pushes the paranoia aside. Second-guessing every impulse leads to paralysis, and he cannot afford paralysis now. The Horcruxes must be retrieved, all of them. The diary was destroyed by Potter years ago, but that was before he understood their true purpose. The loss stings differently now. That piece of his soul is gone, truly gone, absorbed into whatever void claims destroyed soul fragments. It cannot be reclaimed. But the others remain. The ring, already destroyed by Dumbledore, and its fragment, taken by whatever cosmic force claims such things. Another loss. 2 pieces of his soul, gone forever. That leaves 5. The locket, the cup, the diadem, Nagini, and Harry Potter himself, the accidental Horcrux, the living anchor he never intended to create. He sends Death Eaters to retrieve the locket from the cave, though he knows it is no longer there. Potter and his friends have been hunting Horcruxes, another part of the design. Heroes rising to destroy the anchors, weakening the barriers further with each destruction. The reports come back within hours. The locket is gone. The cup is gone. The diadem, hidden for decades in the room of requirement at Hogwarts, is also gone. Potter and his allies have been busy, systematically dismantling the anchors that Voldemort created, never knowing they were playing into the Shadow's design just as surely as he was. But Nagini remains, his constant companion, the serpent who has been with him through his darkest hours. He looks at her now where she coils near the fireplace, her scales gleaming in the flickering light. A piece of his soul resides within her. He can feel the connection, that tether between them that goes beyond mere companionship or magical bonding. "Soon, Nagini," he whispers in Parseltongue, the serpent language that has always felt more natural to him than human speech. "Soon you will be more than a vessel. Soon we will be truly one." The serpent's tongue flickers, tasting the air, sensing the change in her master. Does she understand what is coming? Can a snake comprehend cosmic manipulation and primordial entities? Perhaps not, but she is loyal, and loyalty is a currency more valuable than gold in these uncertain times. That leaves one Horcrux, the most complicated one, the one he never intended to create. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the chosen one, the thorn in his side who has survived more murder attempts than any wizard in history. Voldemort had believed it was prophecy, destiny, the stubborn persistence of love's protection. Now he understands differently. The Shadow needed Harry alive, needed him to fulfill his role as the hero who would push Voldemort toward the final ritual. Every time Harry survived should have been impossible. Every narrow escape was guided, orchestrated, ensured. But now the script has changed. The actors know they are on a stage, and Voldemort intends to burn the theatre down. "Severus," he commands, his voice cutting through the nervous whispers of his assembled Death Eaters. "You maintain contact with the Order through your carefully constructed duplicity. You know where Potter hides." Snape steps forward, his expression carefully neutral. Since Voldemort's revelation about the Shadow, Snape has been quieter than usual, more withdrawn. Is he processing the implications, or was he always more aware than he let on? Another question without answers. "I know the general area, my lord, but the location is protected by powerful enchantments. Fidelius charm. I am not the secret keeper." "Then we will draw him out. Potter has always had a weakness for playing the hero, for charging headlong into danger to save others. We will use that against him, but not to kill him. Not yet." Bellatrix leans forward eagerly. "What do you require of us, my lord?" "A trap, but not for Potter alone. I want Granger and Weasley as well. The three of them have been hunting Horcruxes together. They know what they have destroyed. They may even have gleaned some understanding of the larger pattern, though I doubt they comprehend the full scope. Bring them to me, alive, all three of them." "My lord," Lucius interjects carefully, "if I may ask, why keep Potter alive? He is the final Horcrux. Would it not be simpler to eliminate him and reclaim that fragment of your soul?" Voldemort's gaze fixes on Lucius with an intensity that makes the aristocrat visibly pale. Simpler, yes, but simple solutions are what the Shadow expects. It expects me to either complete the ritual or die trying. It expects Potter to either defeat me or perish in the attempt. We will do neither. Instead, I will perform a working of magic so complex, so unprecedented, that even ancient beings will not anticipate it. He moves to the center of the hall, the Elder Wand held loosely in his hand. "I will extract the Horcrux from Potter without killing him. I will reclaim that piece of my soul while leaving the boy alive. And then I will absorb all remaining fragments, not through destruction, but through reintegration. I will make myself whole while maintaining the distributed power structure the fragmentation created. I will become a singularity of magical force that exists simultaneously as one and as many." The concept is insane, theoretically impossible. The entire purpose of creating Horcruxes is to separate soul fragments into different vessels for protection. Bringing them back together defeats the purpose, returns the soul to its vulnerable state. But Voldemort is proposing something different. Not healing, not restoration, but a forced fusion that maintains the architecture of separation while achieving the unity of wholeness. It should not be possible. Magic does not work that way. The soul is not meant to exist in such a paradoxical state. But then again, primordial beings manipulating reality across millennia should not be possible either. And yet here they are. The ritual will require components, Snape says slowly, his mind already working through the theoretical requirements. Blood of the enemy, essence of the willing servant, something of the original self, uncorrupted by dark magic. These are standard for soul magic, but what you propose goes far beyond anything in recorded magical history. Then we will write new history. Voldemort's voice carries absolute certainty. We will craft a ritual that the Shadow never imagined because it is not supposed to be possible. And in doing so, we will break free of its design entirely. Bellatrix claps her hands together, her face split by a manic grin. Oh, my lord, it is brilliant. We turn the very tools meant to cage you into weapons of liberation. The Shadow thought it was so clever, weaving its web across centuries, but it never imagined the fly might eat the spider. Precisely. For the first time since discovering the truth, Voldemort feels something like satisfaction. The game is not over. The board has merely been revealed, and he has always excelled at games. Begin preparations, he commands. Spread word through our contacts that we have captured members of the Order. Make it believable. Make it urgent. Potter will come. He always does. As his Death Eaters disperse to carry out his orders, Voldemort remains in the Grand Hall, staring into the green flames. Behind him, unnoticed by all except perhaps Snape, who has learned to see what others miss, the shadows in the corners seem to writhe with displeasure. The Shadow is watching. It is always watching, and it is not pleased with this deviation from the script. Good. Let it be displeased. Let it feel, for the first time in 10,000 years, the sting of uncertainty. 2 days later, the trap springs perfectly. Death Eaters stage a raid on a safe house in Yorkshire, where several Order members are sheltering. The attack is brutal, efficient, and most importantly, loud enough to draw attention. Spells light up the night sky like a premature sunrise. Screams echo across the moors, and through carefully placed leaks in their intelligence network, word reaches the ears of Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley that members of the Order need immediate rescue. They take the bait. Of course they take the bait. They always do. Potter apparates into the safe house with his friends at his side, wands drawn, ready to fight, ready to save lives. What they find instead is emptiness. The Order members are gone, evacuated before the raid even began. The entire attack was theatre. And now the theatre door slams shut. Anti-apparition wards snap into place. Silencing charms muffle any sound. Stunning spells fly from all directions. Potter deflects 3, 5, 7 of them, his reflexes honed by months of running and fighting. Granger conjures shields, her wordless magic impressive for someone so young. Weasley fights with the desperation of someone who has lost too much already. But they are outnumbered 20-3, and these are not inexperienced Death Eaters. These are Voldemort's elite, his most skilled followers, instructed explicitly to capture, not kill. It takes 4 minutes, 4 minutes of chaos and fury and desperate magic. But in the end, 3 bodies lie stunned on the floor, wands taken, hands bound with magical restraints that burn against skin and suppress any attempt at wandless magic. Voldemort appears in the doorway like death taking corporeal form. His red eyes survey the captured trio with something between satisfaction and calculation. "Hello, Harry," he says softly, almost gently. "We have much to discuss, and for once, I think you will want to hear what I have to say." Potter spits blood from a split lip, his green eyes blazing with defiance even in defeat. "I'll never help you with whatever sick ritual you're planning. You can torture me, kill me, but I won't be your tool." Voldemort's lipless mouth curves into something that might be a smile if it held any warmth. Tool. An interesting choice of words, Harry, because that is precisely what we have both been. Tools in a game played by something far older and far more dangerous than either of us. But unlike you, I have seen the puppeteer's strings, and I intend to cut them. Confusion flickers across Potter's face. Granger, even bound and stunned on the floor, her brilliant mind working through possibilities, lifts her head. "What are you talking about?" "I am talking about the Shadow That Devours. I'm talking about a primordial entity that has been manipulating magical history for millennia. I'm talking about the fact that your entire life, my entire existence, the prophecy, the Horcruxes, all of it has been orchestrated by something that views us as insects to be positioned and sacrificed for its own liberation." He gestures, and magical restraints lift the three of them to their feet, holding them upright but immobile. "You have been hunting my Horcruxes, destroying them one by one, believing you were fighting against me, but you were playing into the design just as surely as I was. Each Horcrux you destroyed weakened the barriers between worlds, thinning the veil that keeps the shadow imprisoned. You were never the heroes of this story, Harry. You were just different-colored pawns on the same board." "You're lying," Ron spits. "This is just some trick to get us to stop fighting you." "Am I?" Voldemort waves the Elder Wand, and the air shimmers. Images appear projected from his memory, the same visions the monolith showed him. They see Merope Gaunt being influenced by Shadow. They see young Tom Riddle being whispered to in the orphanage. They see the careful orchestration of every major event, the invisible hand guiding both darkness and light toward a singular purpose. Hermione's eyes widen as she watches, her analytical mind immediately grasping the implications. Oh no, if this is real, we've been making it worse. Every Horcrux we destroyed brought the shadow closer to freedom," Voldemort finishes. "Yes, Miss Granger, your brilliance finally grasps the full horror of our situation. The entity that has been pulling our strings does not care who wins between us. It only cares that we follow the script to its conclusion. A script that ends with me performing a ritual in 3 days that will shatter the final barriers and allow an ancient evil to devour reality itself." Harry stares at him, searching for deception, for manipulation. But something in Voldemort's words rings with terrible truth. "So what do you want from us? Why tell us any of this?" "Because I refuse to be anyone's puppet, not Death's, not prophecies, not some ancient entities. And while we may be enemies, Harry Potter, we share one thing in common. We both refuse to accept the roles others have written for us. The Grand Hall of Malfoy Manor has been transformed. What was once a monument to aristocratic excess is now a ritual chamber that would make ancient sorcerers weep with envy or terror, perhaps both. Runes cover every surface, carved not into stone, but into the very fabric of reality itself, glowing with colors that have no names in human language. Circles within circles spread across the floor, each one precisely measured, each line drawn with ink mixed from ingredients so rare that some of them required raids on 3 different continents to acquire. In the center of the largest circle stands Voldemort. Around him, positioned at cardinal points, are his remaining anchors to immortality. Nagini coils in the eastern circle, her scales shimmering with magical energy. In the western circle, bound but conscious, sits Harry Potter, the unwilling Horcrux, the fragment of soul that was never meant to exist. And surrounding them all, arranged in a greater circle that encompasses everything, stand Death Eaters maintaining a constant flow of magical energy into the working. This is magic beyond anything they have ever attempted. This is restructuring the fundamental laws that govern souls and existence. Hermione Granger and Ron Weasley are here too, not bound like Harry, but standing of their own volition at the southern and northern points. After witnessing Voldemort's memories, after understanding the scope of the manipulation, they made a choice that would have seemed impossible just days ago. They chose to help him, not because they trust him, not because they forgive him, but because the alternative is the end of everything. "This is insane," Ron mutters for the 17th time, his wand held loosely in his hand, channeling energy into the ritual structure. "We're helping Voldemort. We're actually helping him. We're helping ourselves survive," Hermione corrects, her voice tight with concentration. "If he's telling the truth about the shadow, and everything I've researched in the last 2 days suggests he is, then this is the only way to prevent an apocalypse. We can go back to trying to kill each other after we save reality." Harry says nothing. He can feel the fragment of Voldemort's soul inside him, that presence he has carried since he was 15 months old. It writhes and burns, aware of what is about to happen. The extraction will be agony. Voldemort has made no promises otherwise, but if it works, if this impossible ritual succeeds, Harry will finally be free of the connection that has haunted him his entire life, and Voldemort will become something unprecedented, something that should not exist. A soul simultaneously whole and fragmented, unified and distributed, one being existing in multiple states at once. "It is time," Voldemort announces, his voice resonating with power that makes the air itself vibrate. The new moon rises. The shadow expects me to complete its ritual, to crack open the prison and let it feast upon existence. Instead, we will show it the difference between a puppet and a master. He raises the Elder Wand, and the ritual begins. The magic that floods the chamber is not dark or light, but something primal, something that predates such simplistic classifications. It is the magic of creation and destruction intertwined, the force that shapes souls and breaks them, heals them and corrupts them. Voldemort speaks words that have not been uttered in 10,000 years, words he learned from the monolith, words the shadow never intended him to understand. The fragment of soul within Harry begins to tear free. The boy screams, his back arching, every nerve ending ablaze with pain that transcends the physical. It feels like being unmade at the most fundamental level, like having his very essence ripped away, thread by thread. Ron and Hermione pour more energy into the ritual, their faces pale with effort, their wands trembling in their hands. "Hold him," Voldemort commands, and invisible forces lock Harry in place as the soul fragment emerges, a writhing, screaming thing of shadow and malevolence that hovers between the boy and its creator. But Voldemort does not simply reabsorb it. Instead, he splits his focus, reaching out simultaneously to Nagini, drawing forth the fragment housed within her. The serpent hisses in agony as the piece of soul is extracted, but she does not die. The ritual is designed to remove without destroying, to reclaim without killing the vessel. 2 fragments of soul hover before him now, drawn from their anchors, but not yet integrated. And here is where the true impossibility begins. Instead of pulling them into himself, instead of healing the damage and becoming whole in the traditional sense, Voldemort creates a new structure, a soul architecture that has never existed before. He weaves the fragments into a lattice around his core self, each piece maintaining its individual integrity while simultaneously being part of the greater whole. It is like a mind existing in multiple dimensions at once, a consciousness that is singular and plural, unified and distributed. The paradox should tear him apart. The contradiction should unmake him. But Voldemort has spent his entire life defying what should be possible. This is merely the ultimate expression of that defiance. The magic intensifies. The runes on the walls burn so brightly that several Death Eaters cry out and avert their eyes. The circles on the floor spin like celestial bodies in orbit, faster and faster until they blur into solid rings of light. And at the center of it all, Voldemort transforms. His physical form remains the same, the pale skin, the serpentine features, the burning red eyes. But something fundamental has changed. He exists in multiple states simultaneously. Part of him is here in this chamber. Part of him is everywhere the fragments once resided. Part of him is in the spaces between, in the cracks of reality where magic bleeds through. He has become a singularity, a point of infinite magical density, a force of nature given consciousness and will. And then the shadow arrives. It does not manifest physically. It cannot, not yet, not while the prison still holds. But its presence floods the chamber like ice water filling a drowning man's lungs. The temperature drops 30 degrees in an instant. Frost spreads across the walls. The Death Eaters stumble back, their faces twisted in primal fear as they feel something looking at them, something ancient and hungry and utterly alien. The voice that speaks has no source. It comes from everywhere and nowhere, from the air itself, from the spaces between heartbeats. What have you done, little serpent? Voldemort turns to face the presence, and for the first time since his transformation, he smiles with genuine emotion. Not cruelty, not madness, but fierce, vindictive satisfaction. I have broken your design, Ancient One. I have taken the tools you crafted and forged them into a weapon you never imagined. I'm no longer your key. I'm no longer your puppet. I'm something new, something you cannot control. You understand nothing. You are still mine. Every thought you believe is your own was planted by me. Every choice was guided. Even this defiance is part of the pattern, is it? Voldemort's voice carries new harmonics, echoes of the soul, fragments integrated into his being. If I am still part of your pattern, then why do I feel you reaching for me and finding nothing to grasp? Why do I sense your confusion, your anger, your fear? Yes, Ancient One, I taste your fear. You thought me a simple tool, but tools can be repurposed, and I have repurposed myself into your executioner. The chamber shakes. Cracks spread across the walls. The shadow is not accustomed to defiance, especially not from insects who should be grateful for the purpose it provided them. You cannot harm me. I am beyond your reach, beyond time, beyond death. I am eternal. So am I. Voldemort raises the Elder Wand, and the lattice structure of his reconstructed soul pulses with power that makes the air scream. But unlike you, I am free. You have been imprisoned for 10,000 years, weakened, reduced to whispers through cracks in reality. I, however, have grown strong. I have transcended mortality. And now I have become something unique in all of magical history, a being who exists simultaneously in multiple states of reality. He begins to cast not a single spell, but a weaving of hundreds, thousands of incantations woven together into a symphony of magic that has never been performed before. He is using the very structure of his reconstructed soul as a weapon, turning the distributed consciousness that the shadow wanted to use as a key into a blade aimed at the prison itself, but not to open it, to seal it further, to reinforce the barriers, to ensure that the shadow remains trapped not for another 10,000 years, but forever. No! The voice becomes a roar that shatters windows and cracks stone. You cannot! You were meant to free me! Everything was arranged. The prophecy, the Horcruxes, the war. It was all for this moment. It was. Voldemort agrees, his voice calm amidst the chaos. But you made one critical error in your planning, Ancient One. You assumed that I would never see the strings. You assumed that even if I did, I would be too broken, too proud, too corrupted by darkness to do anything but follow the script. You underestimated the one thing that has defined me since childhood, my refusal to accept anyone's authority over my fate, not my father's, not Dumbledore's, not Death's, and certainly not yours. The magic reaches a crescendo. Harry, Ron, and Hermione pour everything they have into supporting the working, their faces streaming with sweat despite the freezing cold, their wands glowing white-hot in their hands. The Death Eaters channel power until several collapse from exhaustion. Snape's face is grey with effort, but his wand remains steady, his contribution to the ritual never wavering. And Voldemort, at the center of it all, weaves the final threads of a spell that rewrites the fundamental architecture of the Shadow's prison. The barriers between worlds do not just seal, they crystallize, they become absolute. Every crack the Shadow spent millennia carefully cultivating snaps, shut like wounds cauterized by starfire. Every weakness it exploited hardens into impassable barriers. The whispers that it used to influence reality for 10,000 years go silent, severed, ended. The presence in the chamber convulses, rages, screams with a fury that would drive lesser minds into permanent madness. But its power fades. Its reach contracts, and finally, mercifully, it retreats back into its prison, locked away not just by ancient magic but by new magic, by a working crafted by the very pawn it sought to use. The silence that follows is absolute. For a long moment, no one moves, no one speaks. They simply stand in the aftermath of what they have done, breathing hard, trying to process the fact that they are still alive, still sane, still existing in a reality that has not been devoured by primordial darkness. Voldemort lowers his wand. The lattice structure of his soul settles into its new configuration, stable, permanent, unprecedented. He is whole, but fragmented, one but many. A paradox given life. Harry collapses to his knees, the extraction of the soul fragment having taken everything he had. But his eyes, when he looks up at Voldemort, are clear. The connection is gone. The presence that has haunted him since infancy has been severed. He is finally, completely his own person. "It's done," Hermione whispers, her voice hoarse. "We actually did it. We sealed the Shadow away." "We did more than that," Voldemort replies, and there is something new in his voice. Not warmth exactly, not humanity, but perhaps awareness, understanding. "We broke the cycle. We refused the roles that were written for us. The hero and the villain were supposed to destroy each other and crack the world open in the process. Instead, we chose a third path. We chose to survive." Ron laughs, a sound that borders on hysteria. "So what now? We all go get butterbeer and celebrate? Pretend you haven't murdered hundreds of people? Pretend we're suddenly friends?" "No," Voldemort says flatly. "I am still what I am. You are still what you are. The war is not over. The conflict between us remains. But it will be our conflict, fought on our terms, for our reasons. Not because some ancient entity scripted it into existence." He turns to leave, the Death Eaters falling into formation around him. Nagini, weakened but alive, coils herself around his shoulders. At the doorway, he pauses and looks back at the three young people who helped him defy cosmic horror. Potter, Granger, Weasley. "What we did here tonight will never be spoken of. If word spread that we cooperated, that we worked together, it would shatter the very foundations of the magical world's understanding of itself. So we will maintain the fiction. We will remain enemies. But know this." His red eyes meet Harry's green ones across the distance of the chamber. "You are no longer defined by prophecy. I'm no longer bound by ancient manipulation. Whatever happens between us from this moment forward will be of our own making, our own choices, our own free will. And that, I think, is the most terrifying and exhilarating prospect either of us has ever faced." And with that, he is gone, apparating into the night with his followers. The trio stands alone in the ritual chamber, surrounded by cooling runes and fading magic, trying to process what has just occurred. "Did we do the right thing?" Ron asks quietly. Hermione considers the question carefully before answering. "We did the necessary thing. We saved reality. Whether it was right, I suppose we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to answer that." Harry says nothing. He simply stares at his hands, feeling the absence of the soul fragment like a phantom limb. For the first time in his life, he is completely alone in his own mind. No visions of Voldemort, no connection to darkness, just himself. It should feel like freedom, and it does. But it also feels like standing on the edge of an abyss, staring into a future that is suddenly, terrifyingly undefined. Elsewhere, in a fortress hidden by magic older than nations, Voldemort stands before a window overlooking lands shrouded in perpetual storm. His new consciousness settles into its impossible configuration. He can feel himself existing in multiple states, his awareness spread across dimensions of reality that mortals cannot perceive. He thinks about the shadow, locked away in its prison, perhaps screaming in impotent rage, perhaps plotting across eons for another opportunity, but it will be millennia before it can even whisper again. And by then, who knows what the world will have become? He thinks about Harry Potter, finally freed from the burden of prophecy and connection. The boy will be dangerous now, more dangerous than before, because he no longer fights for destiny, but for choice. A wizard fighting for free will is more formidable than one fighting because fate demands it. And he thinks about himself, about what he has become. Not the Dark Lord as envisioned by prophecy, not the puppet of ancient beings, but something entirely new, a singularity of consciousness, a being who has seen the strings and cut them. The war will continue, blood will be spilled, magic will clash against magic. But now it will be their war, fought on their terms, with outcomes determined by choice rather than cosmic script. For the first time in his long, terrible existence, Lord Voldemort feels something he thought he had murdered decades ago alongside his humanity. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. The genuine, terrifying, exhilarating possibility that tomorrow is not written, that the future is not fixed, that he might actually have the chance to determine his own ending. And in a world no longer controlled by ancient manipulation, even Dark Lords might choose redemption, or they might choose damnation, but whatever they choose, it will be theirs. The shadow that devours lies silent in its prison, defeated not by light, but by the refusal of darkness to remain a tool. And across the magical world, reality settles into new patterns, free patterns, patterns determined by the choices of those who live within it, rather than the designs of those who came before. The war continues, but the players are finally free, and that changes everything. Thanks for watching. For more alternative endings like this, subscribe to our channel. See you on the next video.